Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Myself Abdul Rehman and I'm the lecturer of English at Behria Model College, Majid Esari. Today we are going to discuss about, today we are going to read about, today we are going to understand the 7 ages of man. So 7 ages of man, it's a poetic speech and it's a monologue basically. So monologue means a long speech by one person. In today's class we are going to understand, we are going to read that what is in this poetic speech. So this is our next slide. So before moving forward, before we start the poetic speech 7 ages of man, we need to know something about William Shakespeare. So who was William Shakespeare? So he was basically an English poet, a playwright, a dramatist, an actor, and he was also an important member of the Kingsmen Company of theatrical player. He was born at Stratford upon Avon on April 23rd, 1564, and he belonged to Elizabethan era. So when I say Elizabethan era, so it means that it was a time period of Queen Elizabeth I. It means it was in between 1558 and 1603 here. So he was also in Jacobean era. So when I say Jacobean era, so it was a time period of England King James IV, and it was in between 1603 and 1625 here. So this great person, this great literary person, king of English literature, so he was died in 1616. So this is our third slide. So in this link, so if you click this link, so you will see a video in YouTube. So in this link you will see a very brief introduction of William Shakespeare, but it is in video form here. So it is very informative for you, so kindly click this link before moving forward. The poetic speech, 7 ages of man, it is actually taken from the play, and this is the name of the play As You Like It. So William Shakespeare, he wrote 37 plays. So As You Like It is one of them here. So 7 ages of man, it is taken from this play here. So this play is actually written by William Shakespeare. It's a comedy play here. So Rosalind is basically a character, and you can say she is the heroine or the protagonist of the play here. So the main positive central character, you can say here, is Rosalind in this play here. And this poetic speech and this long speech by a person or by a character, or you can say a monologue, 7 ages of man, is spoken by a character, and the name of the character is Jax. This speech is in act number 2, scene number 7 of the play here. Okay, the 7 ages of man here. So when I say 7 ages of man, so 7 is a number, man is basically called as all humankind here. So what is the meaning of age here? So there are multiple meanings of age here. So you can say 7 levels of man, you can say 7 segments of man, 7 parts of man, 7 scenes of man, 7 divisions of man, 7 chapters of man here. So the most relevant word among these words is scenes, because it is also written in this poetic speech here. So we need to understand one thing, that 7 ages of man, it's a poetic speech. So if it is a poetic speech, so it means that in this poem the language is poetic. So there is a difference between poetic language and a newspaper language here. So what is the difference between these two? So the basic difference is, in poetic language we use figurative language here. So the figurative language means that when you use a word or a phrase that does not have its normal everyday literal meaning, so it is called as figurative language. So there are few words or few different ways to use figurative language. So we have metaphor, For example, we have simile, we have analogy here. So what is basically metaphor here? So metaphor is a common figure of speech, so we use it for a comparison. So when we use a direct comparison between two different things, it is called as metaphor. For example, when I say you are a lion, so when I say you are a lion, so it means you are not actually a lion. You are not physically lying. I am going to say, I mean to say that you are very brave. I mean to say that you are very powerful. That's why I'm using this metaphor for you here. So in Urdu it is called as istara, and in English it is called as metaphor here. Second one is called as simile. In simile we also compare two different things here. But in metaphor we compare directly, but in simile we do not compare directly but indirectly. So in simile we use like and as. For example, if I say you are lion, so it's a metaphor. You are a lion, it's a metaphor. So when I use you are as brave as lion, so it's a simile here. And the third one is analogy. So analogy is basically a comparison between one thing and another. So the purpose is to explain something, to clarify something. So this is the text of the 7 edges of man here. So this is the first line of the 7 edges of man here. So while you're reading this, so you need to keep one thing in your mind. It is not a newspaper language. It's a poetic language. It means you will see metaphor, you will see here similes, you will see here analogy here. So you need to focus on these things here. So the first line is all the world's a stage. So William Shakespeare is saying this world is a stage. If you see here, stage is a metaphor here. Why? Because this world is not actually a stage. So he is comparing this world with stage. So there is one similar thing there is one similar thing between stage and second one is this world here. What is the common thing here? Stage is a temporary place for an actor. In the same way, this world is a temporary place for a human being. So this is the second line of the speech. And all the men and women merely players here. So in this line, William Shakespeare, he is using a second metaphor. And what is the metaphor? The metaphor is called as player. Player means actor. So here, actually we are not actors here. So William Shakespeare, he is comparing human being with actor because there is one similarity. We are here in this world as a human being to perform. In the same way, actors are here on the stage to perform. So actors are the performer. In the same way, we are the performer. Okay, the next line. So they have their exits and their entrances here. So in the stage, there is an exit and there is an entrance here. In the same way, in this world, there is an exit and there is an entrance here. So in this line, William Shakespeare, he is using two metaphors here. Exit means death and entrance means birth. Next line. And one man in his lifetime plays many parts. So here plays means perform. So as a human being, we perform many parts. Many parts means many roles here. So now William Shakespeare, he is describing in this poetic speech that what are the different roles or the different ages, or you can say the different scenes of human life. His act being 7 edges here. So it's an analogy basically here. As I told you earlier, that analogy means to compare two things. The purpose is to clarify something. The purpose is to explain something here. So this is the first scene of human life here. William Shakespeare, he is saying that at first the infant. So here the infant, it is a word here. So here William Shakespeare is using analogy here. So the purpose is to clarify something, to explain something here. So infant is basically an age bracket here. So in every stage, or you can say in every scene, William Shakespeare is describing the different feature of this age bracket here. So the first age bracket is called as infant. So what does an infant do? So mewling and puking in the nurse's arm. So mewling means a crying voice of a child. Puking means basically there is basically a liquid inside the mouth of a child, and he is you can say taking out from his mouth every time. So this is called as puking here. And nurse's arm. So nurse means a mother, or you can say a person who is taking care of the baby here. So this is basically a characteristic of this age bracket. This is called as the age bracket, or you can say the first scene of human life as an infant. So the next line is, then the whining schoolboy with his satchel. This is the second scene of human life. So here schoolboy is the age bracket basically. It's an analogy to explain or to clarify something here. So in this age, a child is actually whining. So whining means crying voice basically here. And satchel means it is basically called as a bag. So there is a bag on his back, and he is crying, he or she is crying every time. So William Shakespeare, he is describing the second scene of human life here. And shining morning face, creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. So here William Shakespeare, he is using a metaphor again here. A shining morning face is basically called as innocence. So he is actually describing the innocence of this age bracket here. Secondly, he is using also a simile, and the simile is basically called as a snail here. So in this age, he or she is moving very slowly. The person is moving very slowly. Very slowly means creeping like snail. So the meaning is here, moving very slowly. Unwillingly to school. So not willing to go to school. Every time he cries here. So simile like snail, and the metaphor is a shining morning face to describe innocence. So this is the end of today's class, and now we are moving towards, you can say, the next slide, and it is basically a slide of homework. So what is the homework for today's class? Number one is, so you will answer in your own wording here. Number one is, what do you know about William Shakespeare? So you will write some lines in your own wording here. Second one is, what is the first scene of human life? Please explain in your own words, in your own wording. Third one is, what is the second scene of human life here? So you have to explain in your own wordings here. Thank you very much for your patience. So see you in the next class. Allah Hafiz.